Hi guys, this is the Fourth Snake. About 6 months ago, I made a video of the top 10 video game movies. Don't watch it. Really, don't. Don't even click the link in the description. Just don't. Anyway, Doug Walker, the nostalgia critic, has often said that a good way to get started with reviews is to do top 10 lists because, well, everybody loves top 10s. And who am I to argue with that? Now, since the original version, I've actually added another film to the list, so it's gone from the top 10 video game movies to the top 11. I'm not trying to rip off the nostalgia critic, it's just that 10 plus 1 equals 11. Simple maths. So, let's get started. But before we begin, let's go over some honourable mentions. First, Sonic the Hedgehog the movie and Tekken the motion picture. These two would most likely be on the list, if not for the fact that they were made as pairs of OVAs, original video animation, and put together as films for the dub releases. I'll review these two someday, but for now I'm leaving them alone. Next we have Assassin's Creed Lineage, Ascendant and Embers. Leading up to the releases of the three Ezio games, Ubisoft made short films of varying styles that lead into, or follow on from, the events of the related games. Each one provided more story and character to the Creed verse, but they each had running lengths of about 30 to 40 minutes, so I don't count them as films. I do recommend finding them on YouTube, however, since they do a good job of developing some of the characters better, and they do have good action. And finally, Zombrex, Dead Rising Sun. This didn't make it onto the list on account of the fact it was released on the internet in parts, and not as a complete film. If you're a zombie fan, then you should definitely check it out though. And with that all out of the way, let's get to number 11. Number 11. Dead Space Aftermath. Aftermath follows on from the end of the first Dead Space and sets up the second one. The story is told through the 2D flashbacks of a group of CG characters, each with wildly different art styles and character designs. This didn't make it higher on the list because, honestly, I found it quite boring. The story isn't very closely related to the game it's setting up, and there's only one death that carries any weight because we don't know most of the characters before they die. Plus, no one who survives right at the start is kind of dumb in a picked off one by one kind of story. All in all, not a bad film, but this is too much conspiracy crap and not enough boot on dome action. I want to see more of that in the film. Number 10. Hitman. Alright, I know what you're thinking, but just hear me out, okay? Yes, 47 should have been older, and he definitely should have spent more time actually being a silent assassin than babysitting a shoehorned in love interest. Maybe they should have taken a slower, more methodical approach and focused on 47 planning and executing an assassination instead of blowing shit up and running from explosions. In fact, take a look at this. Both the game and film versions of 47 in the same pose, but they perfectly sum up the problem with the film. 47 is too visible and open in the film, while the game version is in darkness. This is one of those times where the films are enjoyable, but not very good adaptations, and trust me, we'll be seeing a lot more of that in the future. Number 9. Resident Evil Degeneration. While the live action Resident Evil films are utter pig shit, the CG in continuity Resident Evil film is actually worth watching. The film follows Leon and Claire as they deal with the T-virus outbreak a year after the events of Resident Evil 4. The film had a good cast and the story was okay, but there is a pretty big problem. Because of his immense popularity with the fans after Resi 4, Leon is clearly the star, while Claire's just kinda there. She doesn't contribute much to the film beyond the first act, and she spends the rest of the film just wandering around and blaming the wrong people for what's going on. Her screen time could have easily been given to Angela, given that she's more important to the plot than Claire is. Overall, not bad, but it needed more for Claire to do. Like this. Number 8. Silent Hill. Now, this is a strange one because although the film had a lot of flaws, I have to give credit where credit's due, and it certainly is with its visuals. The film looked exactly the way you'd want it to. It retains all the creepy visuals from the games, the fog world looks perfect, and the otherworld transition effect is really good. But there are problems. The film is a loose adaptation of the first game where everyman Harry Mason crashes his car in Silent Hill and his daughter Cheryl goes missing. Simple enough, right? So let's take a look at how Hollywood fucked up such a simple premise. Supposedly the producers felt that Harry's personality, what little there is, better suited a female character. I don't know why, but they replaced good old Harry with Rose de Silva and renamed Cheryl to Sharon. Okay. Then they suddenly realised that they did want a male lead after all, so Sean Bean was cast as Rose's completely ineffectual husband, Chris. No, not that Chris. Although that would be pretty awesome. But one has to wonder why they didn't just have the main character be Harry's wife and Harry as a co-star. But the people in Hollywood do have a tendency to be complete fucking idiots. As proven by the director throwing a bunch of Silent Hill 2 monsters because he liked that game. He could have just made a film of Silent Hill 2 since it doesn't follow on from the first one, but I'm clearly giving it more thought than he did. The final problem is the change of the plot from an empty town with a demon worshipping cult to a fairly well inhabited town with a witch burning cult. Yes, they really did do that. Bottom line, visually it's great, but story wise, not so much. Besides, I'm still waiting for them to make this movie.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
Number 7, Dante's Inferno, an animated epic. Based on the game, which was in turn based on the poem, Dante's Inferno follows Dante as he journeys through the 9 circles of hell to save his beloved Beatrice. The film was a surprisingly faithful adaptation, but with a few changes, some good, some bad, and some head-scratchingly odd. A good one is that the cross on Dante's chest is now forced on him instead of self-inflicted. A bad one is that Dante takes his scythe from a random enemy instead of killing Death and taking his scythe. In fact, Death was cut from the film completely. And that annoyed me, because the fight with Death was one of the best parts of the game. Strangely, they had 6 different animation companies working on the film, which, while it works for the Animatrix and Halo Legends with the separate stories, this is one ongoing story, so the constant change in art style is really jarring, even more so than Dead Space Downfall. It might have worked better if they had a different style for each circle of hell, but it changes every few circles and gets distracting. The opposite of Silent Hill, they got the story down, but the visuals were off a bit because of the constant art shifts. If you can get over that though, it's a really good film. Number 6, Dead Space Downfall. This film acts as a prequel to the first Dead Space, detailing the Necromorph outbreak on the colony and how it spreads to the ship, ending just where the game picks up. The film has a pretty good plot, and you grow to like at least some of the characters before they inevitably die off. It does a decent job of showing what the ship was like before the outbreak, and sets up the game well. Plus, we have this guy.
These things seem to handle bullets just fine, but a couple rips from this bad boy and they don't get up.
What's not to like? Number 5, Doom. Now, before you start your bitching, let me explain, alright? This is a terrible adaptation of Doom. There's no denying that. It barely resembles the game at all, but I'm not putting these films on the list on how good they are as adaptations. Like I said, some of these aren't adaptations at all. No, I'm putting them on as films that happen to be based on games. It just so happens that most of the ones that don't follow the game plot are also terrible movies. Naturally, a lot of the decisions made with this film are stupid. The plot is pretty generic sci-fi horror fare, and the whole concept of genes containing the soul was completely retarded. But I do like the film. And that FPS sequence was hilarious. I mean, did you... What? It wasn't supposed to be funny. Oh. Well, it has The Rock in it, and anything with The Rock in it is instantly awesome. Number 4, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. It was pretty obvious this was going to be here, given the thousands upon thousands of AMVs made with scenes from the film. My main problem with the film is that the focus is solely on Cloud and Tifa, the main characters from the game, while the rest of the party is hardly in the film, so we don't know what they've been up to since the end of the game. The action is fast paced and over the top, but the plot is pretty convoluted, and it's clear from the cover that the whole thing is building up to a fight between Cloud and Sephiroth at the end. Despite Sephiroth being, you know, kinda dead. Square Enix later released Advent Children Complete on Blu-ray, to improve the visuals, add more scenes to explain what the fuck's going on, fix a few visual mistakes, and extend the final fight. Still no more screen time for the rest of the crew though. I don't get it. Barrett, who looks exactly like Mr. T by the way, was such a major character in the game, but gets about 3 lines in the whole film. Why would you not want Mr. T as the star?
Mother, there is no other like mother, so treat her right.
Oh. Yeah. Number 3. Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time. I've only recently seen this film and I got completely obsessed with it afterwards. I got the figures. I got the Choose Your Own Adventure books. I got the graphic novel. I got the book of the film. I got the movie storybook. The 3D poster book. Even the top trumps. I don't know what it is about this film, but I got really obsessed with it after watching it. It's a fairly loose adaptation of the Sands of Time game, but with various nods to pretty much every other entry in the series. The story itself is barely related to the game's plot, but the new plot isn't too bad, and the action was good, especially the parkour. One thing a lot of people comment on is the villain being a bit too obvious. Yeah, I can see that. But at least he's more of a motivation than the game version, who really didn't have a very clear goal. Power, I think. Another thing some people have complained about is the casting of Jake Gyllenhaal, a white man, to play the Prince of Persia. To be fair, it's something the game did, so at least it's accurate to the game. Number 2. Lara Croft Tomb Raider. This is as good as a film based on a game, but with an original story, is going to get. It tells its own story, but stays true to the character of Lara Croft. And while her outfit is different from the one in the game, it is clear that the filmmakers cared enough to try and make it similar, unlike most video game movies where the characters are completely unrecognisable. It's funny that Angelina Jolie, an American, plays an Englishwoman, and Daniel Craig, an Englishman, plays an American. One really good thing about the film is that the butler is Arnold Rimmer. And he even returned for the sequel. And he never appeared in a movie again. Thank you, Hollywood. Number 1. Mortal Kombat. Believe it or not, Paul W. S. Anderson actually did make a good movie once. Before he produced DOA, before he directed AVP and those fucking heinous Resident Evil films that just won't die, he directed Mortal Kombat. It followed the first game's plot with a few acceptable changes, it got the characters mostly right, and it wasn't a $60 million self-insert fanfic for his wife. It's also the only time he's made a PG-13 film based on an R or M rated franchise and done it well. Plus, the film gave us this banging tune. And so that's my list of the top 11 video game movies. Have your own list of 5 or 10? Or maybe you'd like to go one step beyond? Leave a comment or video response. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to try and track down a copy of Sonic the Hedgehog the movie. Because Sonic was the shit.